Welcome back, guys. Keeping in line with the type of ad hoc videos that I've been doing recently, and just to continue with the series, I've decided to start sharing more personal stories with you guys. Stories about things that at a certain point in my life I struggled a bit with or that I found challenging. And I decided to dive deeper into basically the story of how I developed my personality, how I went from being an introvert who struggled with the fact that was an introvert or I hated myself for having that personality type to basically overcoming that limiting belief and developing my social skills, essentially. So I know you see me posting on YouTube, making videos, and even if you're someone who maybe knows me in real life, it might be hard for you to believe that I'm an introvert. Essentially, keep in mind that as far as the definitions that I'm using for the personality types is based on the type of interactions that bring you energy, that energize you, fill you with power. And I categorize myself as an introvert because I prefer minimal interactions or one-on-one interactions, and typically environments that are filled with high stimuli. So loud music, lots of people, loud parties. Those are things that they have their place. There are things that I enjoy from time to time, but not something that I regularly enjoy doing because sure, I'll go out and enjoy it, but then the next day, like, I want to be alone by myself. I don't want to talk to anyone, and it's just me recharging my social battery, etc. That being said, so growing up, I hated the fact that I was an introvert. I hated my personality type to the point where I even felt less than people who were extroverted, because the realities of the world, right? The world caters more to extroverted people, people who are naturally good at social interactions, meeting people, making friends, etc. And growing up, I had this huge limiting belief that I would never be successful at certain things, for example, successful in relationships or business or different categories because of my personality. And it took concentrated and intentional effort to surpass this. So how did I do it? So there's actually, if you go back to the beginning of this channel, I have a few videos where I talk about the things that I was actively doing to basically get social practice in, right? I know there's a bunch of guys who do this whole like cold approach, 200 girls or 200 strangers, whatnot, right? My approach was very, let's call it autistic, right? It was very methodical. So I would set targets for myself as the number of people or interactions that I had to take part in on a certain day. So when I started to be intentional about developing my skill in a sense, right? First, I read a lot to really understand personality types. So that was the precedent to all this. Just me deciding to understand, okay, is this something that can be changed? Can you train this? Because ultimately, okay, can you really fake? If you're an introvert, can you fake being an extrovert? If you're an extrovert, can you fake being an introvert? Whatnot. Yes, you can. It's manipulation in a way, right? But manipulation has a negative connotation, but manipulation is basically guiding something to where you want it to go. In a sense, that's like the abstract definition. And you can essentially manipulate yourself or others to think you are a certain way, right? In social dynamics, there's a term called code switching. Like when you're talking to people from a certain area, you kind of tend to mimic their accent, so it makes you more relatable and they trust you more. There's a lot of underlying principles, psychology-wise, as to why humans do this, right? So tangent, but essentially that's what I did. I dove deep to understand the psychology behind the different personality types, particularly my own, right? Because it's the one I'm trying to learn how to mold. Some books, interesting books, right, that helped me. So one is Personality Isn't Permanent. I forget, is it Dan Sullivan, I believe? I believe it's Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Not sure, but pretty sure it's from them. Another one was The Secret Lives of Introverts. That's another one that I enjoyed very much. And the third one was Quiet. I think it's Susan something. I forget the authors. I'm Can't really recall them off the top of my head. But essentially, I just started reading a bunch of books, and starting to understand the different dynamics between introverts, extroverts, etc. And then I decided to come up with a plan, like I said, to improve my social skills. So this was back when I was living in Miami, because I was living by myself. I had just gotten out of my previous relationship, and that's when I really honed in on my personal development. And one of the things that I wanted to overcome was that self-belief of being an introvert. That's that limiting self-belief of being an introvert. So I got to work. Basically, I made an effort to consistently go out every week, but I would do, for example, I would go out by myself to a bar or a nightclub, and I would literally scan the place and find a person who was by themselves, ideally at the bar, and then I would sit next to them and I would spark up a conversation with them, because odds are they're sitting at the bar by themselves, they're by themselves. So they're not going to say no to some, hey, you know, there's this dude, yeah, sure, why not, let's talk a little bit. And it was a great way to start getting practice on not just making small talk, right? Because to be honest, it's something that I dread. I don't like it, but there's ways you gotta interact with people, right? There's ways to talk to people without clearly showing on your face that you hate small talk. Then yeah, that's something that I did pretty regularly. Then of course there were other small things, but if I went to, as I was out and about on my day at the gym, buying groceries, whatever, saying hi to strangers, complimenting strangers. Of course, at one point as well, like if there was a girl that I wasn't interested in, just cold approaching her, just putting a lot of reps in. But I didn't focus, so my objective wasn't just to focus on cold approaching girls, right? Because that's something that a lot of guys or channels who create content around dating, that's what they do. I wanted to get good at talking to everyone. And there was this story that I'm gonna tell bits of it basically, but it was a park, the setting was like a park, and there was this old man who every day would sit on a bench and feed the pigeons. And you know, there's joggers running around the park, and they would notice that this old man was talking to the pigeons. But the joggers were like, oh, this guy's crazy, paid him no mind and kept running. But consistently, the old man every day was at the bench, feeding the pigeons and talking to them. Until eventually, one of the joggers couldn't take it anymore, and out of curiosity, decided to approach the old man and straight up asked him, like, sir, why, I'm curious, I see you here every day, why do you talk to the pigeons? And the old man just replied, because I never miss an opportunity to practice. And that story stuck with me in a sense, because it was sometimes, and this is a mistake that I made, when it was someone that I didn't want to talk to, I immediately dismissed that person. Dismissed it, and just like, for example, if I went out on a date, and you can tell pretty much in the first 5 seconds of the date if it's gonna be a good date or a shitty date. And if it was like, this girl doesn't look like her pictures, or she's boring, or whatever it may be, I used to check out mentally and not put any effort into the interaction. But there came a point where, as I was improving this skill, I decided to, you know what? It's practice. Let's not waste the opportunity. We're here. Let's work on our storytelling. Let's work on banter. Just work. Enjoy the moment and just practice. Don't let it go to waste. So that was a very crucial mindset shift that also helped me just get better at it. But the most important thing was just basically, I always equated introversion to being insecure. And that was the biggest limiting belief that I had to break. When I realized, after enough research and enough practice, I realized that really there was nothing wrong with being a fucking introvert, and that essentially there was no correlation at all between being an introvert and being insecure. That's when it clicked for me. That's when I was like, okay, really, this was all in my mind that has nothing to do with it. And obviously, as I grew older and I knew myself more and more and started to learn more the things I liked, the things I don't like, and accepting the things that I like and didn't like, right? Because when I was growing up, you're in high school, college, everyone wants to party. But maybe one day you don't want to go to party, but then your friends ask you out, you skip, and then they don't ask you out again, but then next time you want to go, but they're not going to invite you because you said no the last time. That whole thing, right? That was a stupid things. They're really stupid problems, right? But I know a lot of people have these problems. And it was just that whole thing of breaking that belief, like I said, of introversion is not insecurity. It has nothing to do with it. It's simply a matter of how you prefer to spend your time and how you spend your alone time, let's say, or your leisure time, in a sense, right? Because some people like to train with others. I prefer to train by myself. It's all that dynamic. So, okay, this video is a bit longer than what I intended, but essentially I wanted to share that story, right? Because it's a perspective, and the takeaway is that at one point I believed that I was screwed, that no matter what I did, I could never be great at sales because I was an introvert, or that I would never get a hot ass girlfriend because I was an introvert, or that I wasn't gonna be fun at parties because I was an introvert, whatever. But the takeaway is you can actually change that. You can improve that. It's everything. It's like a skill. It's really a skill, and all skills can be learned, like Alex Ramosi says. It's just time and practice. And you can get to a point where really you develop your character enough to where it doesn't matter what personality type you are. You can adjust to the situation. And then if you really need some alone time or some recharge time, you can do that on your own time and not have it affect the perception that others have of you. So that's the main takeaway. Long story, but hey, practice in my storytelling. So I'm gonna keep the videos going, just sharing these stories. I have a few other topics that I haven't really talked about before in the channel, like insights into just like my experience with relationships and other, let's say, personal challenges that I had to overcome. But I'm gonna be sharing them over the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some value out of the story. Leave a like and subscribe if you found it valuable, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.